Hello everyone, and welcome back to the RimWorld Gun Empire series. My friends, it is ever so good to see you back here today for our final episode of Season 2. We're starting off a bit hot and heavy today with some improved defenses. We're actually going to be repairing and reconstructing our old pillbox. It is much smaller than it used to be, but I do plan on expending more of our resources instead of here into some more automated defenses. That way it keeps us safe and sound for the most part. We then had loaded up plenty of weapons and ammo as well as silver, and we planned on going out to do a bit of trading with the RimWorld Marshal Service. Since they're finally purchasing some of our finest weapons once more, it was now affordable again for us to begin buying resources from them like steel, plasteel, and even a little bit of uranium and components. And after returning home, as you can see, we have an absolute shit ton of these resources, which, as I mentioned earlier, I do plan on using on some new types of defenses. And in terms of new, what I mean is that they're new to the base. These are the same types of turrets that you've seen before from last episode, the large sentry turrets, as I believe they are much more effective than autocannons. But I also built some dual cannon autocannons just to be safe. In the meantime, we also thought it might be a good idea to try and work on the psychological well-being of General Hawthorne. He still hasn't spoke at all since we took him prisoner, so we decided a bit of brainwashing / rewiring might help him out a little bit. Although after the process, upon further inspection, he still seems to be something of an empty vessel at the moment. Because of this, with his regenerative properties given to him by his cybernetics, we thought he might make a good experiment. We tested out several different types of drugs on him, and nothing really ever happened. We even gave him a bit of go juice to see if it would get him going, and that didn't work either. It was becoming crystal clear that further research would be needed, so we decided to take a blood sample and take it up to Down's lab so that she may study it further. Perhaps we could figure out what's wrong with him and restore him to his old self. Or, perhaps just maybe, we could unravel the secrets that the Marshals used to create this monstrosity and create our own brand of super soldiers. Only time shall tell. In the meantime, while we're studying Hawthorne's blood though, we would also end up creating yet another armored vehicle. Which made me remember in the last episode I asked you wonderful people for some names, and you guys provided me with King Cobra for our first armored vehicle. And I had spotted yet another name that I really liked that I think would be perfect for our second one, which is the Copperhead. I would end up giving the King Cobra a more appropriate paint job, and these wonderful names were also provided by our good friend Far Corporate and Jackpot 3673, so thank you both ever so much. In particular, I also like that both of these names were sticking with our venomous snake themes. After that, I began to have a bit of compassion for our rebel prisoners that we had in solitary confinement. It felt like they had served their time, and they were also beginning to have hallucinations, so I thought maybe we should put them back with the general populace. They won't be much good as leverage if they end up like Hawthorne, that's for sure. A bit of time later and we would end up tackling a major project, most likely the largest mining operation that we've actually began since this season or series began, except for the main base overall, which was a large work in progress for a long time. As you can see, it's going to be something of a large entrance tunnel, but also a large garage. Construction was halted when we received the blessed news that Fithel was pregnant with Commando Jr.'s child. Aw, we'll finally have our first little rugrat of our main mercenaries born at the headquarters. It was that same night that one of our settlements had called in to the headquarters explaining that while mining for resources to make weapons and ammunition, they began to feel a very strange presence in the mine with them. Perhaps an ancient, priceless artifact from an ancient Thromboian civilization. We requested that they continue to mine and investigate, and we even sent them in some soldiers. Besides, at the moment, it would seem that we have much bigger fish to fry. An assault from the Oak Foundation, with one of them being the grandnephew of Cheeseman. But do not be deceived by their forces, my friends. Though they may not look like much, and though they may not be in a large number, these are not your average rebel soldiers. They are much more well-trained than your average enlisted rebel. They also tend to sport some very sophisticated armor and weaponry as well. A singular shot from that pulse rifle could easily penetrate our plate carriers, and their standard issue battle mechs now come equipped with a cyclone cyclone minigun. Even one of them single-handedly could lay down an absolute blanket of bullets on the battlefield easily. All of them in this raid led and commanded by the infamous Agent Jinjin, known as the Green Death. An attack from the Oak Foundation is no laughing matter, but luckily we did have something of a strategy up our sleeve. Our sentry turrets would draw their fire just enough until we could open up the gates and send out our armored vehicles. Luckily, the armored plating on these vehicles was just enough to deflect any bullets from the pulse rifles, as well as smash their mechanoids without even a dent on our bumpers. Surprisingly, we would actually make very quick work out of the raiders and they would begin to flee the area. The Agent Jinjin would end up getting away, unfortunately, but her companions would not be so lucky. We would do our absolute best to try and subdue them before they could leave the area. The more of them that we killed, the more of their weapons we could try to reverse engineer and take for ourselves. Speaking of which, once the chaos had settled after the battle ended, we also noticed that one of the mechanoids still had a persona core intact. A very rare item to come across and damn near impossible to fabricate due to the complexity of its inner workings. We would also end up taking one of the Oak Foundation agents as our prisoner to use as leverage once more whenever we do decide to make peace. We were sure to strip search them to ensure they don't have any satchel charges hidden in any orifices. But now we could and would finally begin finishing up the last little bit of our mega project here with our gigantic garage/tunnel through the mountain. Now you might be asking yourself, Ratty Daddy, why do you need such a massive garage? Well, my dear friends, I am going to be building yet another Mother class mech. Yes indeed, my dear friends, you heard me correctly, yet another of these unstoppable behemoths. This one in particular is going to be named Anarchy, a stark contrast to our other one that is named Diplomacy Mark II, something that was noticed by our good friend Spencer-W3S, who states the mech should be named Anarchy because diplomacy is no longer an option, which is a good idea, but I think diplomacy and anarchy go hand in hand, and so we'll have two of them. We'll be keeping them both in this gigantic tunnel garage here, ready at a moment's notice in case we're invaded or in case we want to do some invading. I must say, we're truly racking up the vehicles and mechs at this point. All commonplace though, given our line of work. Now that we really have things taken care of, on the vehicle side though, I wanted to try and get everyone some proper firearms, or at least some more advanced firearms, and I thought the pulse rifles of the Oak Foundation would be perfect. Not only are they extremely powerful, but once again, they give us that uniform look that we're going for. With some time and reverse engineering from Downs and Richard, I think we should be able to make these for all of our mercenaries across the planet, making them standard issue for our defense force. Now then, focusing a bit less on invading and attacking and more on diplomacy and business, we've decided to build ourselves something of a meeting room. To be honest with you, I'm actually very shocked that we're only just now doing this. This seems like it would have been very useful in Season 1, but we did conduct a lot of business over radio transmission, so I guess it makes sense. This also felt like the perfect room to display some of our trophies, like our legendary antique rifle that we got from the quest with the Thromboian Union, just as well as the legendary cutlass sword from the infamous General Shortus of the Rebels. Once we make peace, perhaps we'll need to hide that when we have President Tree over for business dealings. And something else that I had completely forgot to do, you know, I've been talking about how we don't have slaves anymore, and we're not really into having slaves in this colony anymore at HQ, or really under the SNR Rifle Company. We do have Nenal here, who needs to be emancipated. We would have him strip of his collar and bindings, and then have Kate go ahead and release him of his bondage from us. We were sorry that we had kept him here for so long while we had freed others, but we wouldn't give him any type of parting gift like silver, unfortunately. We felt that his freedom and his job experience here would be plenty enough. Perhaps we'll see him in the next series. Foreshadowing. Anyways, we had received word from our allies in the Outlands, the Forgotten, as well as the Thromboian Union, stating that they needed more weapons and ammunition, so we immediately began loading this up into our chopper to take off and go there. Of course, this wasn't charity work, and we weren't doing it out of the kindness of our hearts. We had something in mind that we needed from them. However, this trading will take quite a bit of time, especially to find the Forgotten. They're a bit hard to pin down nowadays, ever since Ortega was murdered. In the meantime, while we're doing some trading, trading, Gak had rejoined our ranks back at the headquarters after he tried to cowardly run away once he saw a nuclear bomb dropped on the base. Hopefully, he has some newly instilled bravery. We would also end up performing a couple of surgeries on Commando Jr., swapping out his prosthetic arms with some new bionic arms, which Richard has been working on behind the scenes for a little while. Given the good condition of our medical room here, as well as Richard's medical skill, everything went down perfectly. We would also commission Greffis to go ahead and begin working on some new special unique armor for Commando Jr. as well. And in case you couldn't tell, we are kind of making him into a cybernetic super soldier just as we had with Greffis, just not on the same level. However, his current cybernetics and optimized armor would make him a perfect subject for these mechs, and thus he shall be the operator of Anarchy. His first mission, he and Greffis will be going out to attack a nearby rebel city. Long gone are the days of sending out entire squadrons to try and attack settlements. Now we send out 1 or 2 people in massive death machines. Our trade mission had seemed to be successful. We ended up arriving back home shortly after the mechs left, and we had plenty of steel components, advanced components, and most importantly, a bunch of car parts. Yes, I know, you're probably sick of seeing me build so many vehicles at this point, but I promise this will be the last one. You know, maybe. We've built a Raptor fighter jet that will be deemed the I Mark II after our smuggler airplane that was destroyed in the nuclear blast. Mark II being a hell of an understatement, possibly the understatement of a lifetime, as this is most likely the most advanced aerial vehicle that we have ever created. It even utilized one of the persona cores that we had ripped out of a rebel mechanoid. We would send it out to provide aerial support to our massive mother class mechs and their operators. And we also packed a special payload for the rebel city just in case things were to go awry. Upon further inspection, this was a mid-sized city at best. The perfect target for what we had in mind. This wasn't about taking resources or weapons. This was simply to send a message, and maybe to get a little bit more revenge on them for nuking us. There were many a soldier here, but it should be noted that there were no civilians to be detected. It would seem that they've been evacuated shortly before we arrived, which was absolutely perfect for what we had in mind. The complete and utter freedom to annihilate every living being inside this city. We would force our mechs down their city streets and destroy what little defenses they actually had at their disposal, including many of their soldiers who were stuck between the treads of our mechs. This city seems to be used for its power generation, so we would also attack its wind turbines and solar panels as well. And for the final coup de grace, we would call in mortar strikes in 2 separate sections of the city from our nearby settlements, absolutely decimating their infrastructure. Many of their men and women would make a heroic last stand against us, trying to stop us from destroying their city's batteries. But I'm afraid for their sake that this would all be in vain, as they would be quickly annihilated. And with that, after many a rebel life was taken, they would begin a retreat out of the city. And as they began to flee from the city, we would as well. We had to get our mechs out of there if we were going to completely demolish it. Although we could use our mechs for this, I had something else in mind. A little cherry on top. Yes, I think that did the trick quite well, rendering this city completely uninhabitable. And with that, my friends, our righteous payback has been swiftly issued to the rebels. Normally, I would be a bit worried about a massive retaliation, but since they're fighting us, the Thromboian Union, the Marshal Service, the Forgotten, I could go on for days about the other smaller factions of the Outlands, something tells me they'll be pretty inclined to make peace with us now. Yes, indeed, things truly are coming to a head here, with everything almost back to normal, at least in terms of our clientele. But the rebels are a proud folk, and they will fight to the very last drop of blood if we don't release their prisoners, so that's what we're going to need to do before we can even attempt to make peace with them. Besides, word has it that they actually have some of our fine mercenaries imprisoned in their settlements in the Outlands anyhow, so it's kind of like a swap, you could say, an eye for an eye. Over the next couple of hours, every single rebel prisoner that we had would end up leaving, and would you look at that? It would seem that diplomacy and anarchy were exactly what we needed to kiss and make up with them. Funny enough, we're basically allied, or at least neutral, with every single large faction on the planet. Now, the smaller factions in the Outlands, not so much, and the Confederacy of Benya, also not so much, but we're not really worried about them. But now, my friends, if you'll excuse us, we have some important business meetings to attend to. Now that we're all here, and better yet, we're all at peace with the S&R Rifle Company, we need to set up some global and international laws for trading. Dibbo here, the founder of the United Traders, would end up setting up deals with us, the Marshals, and the Rebels. And the United Traders shall become their own faction, a global, completely neutral trading faction. You could kind of think of this as the Geneva Convention, except we're not setting up any rules for warfare or anything like that, specifically only for trading. Specifically who and what can and cannot be traded, and the rules of doing so. And in case you're wondering why any of the factions would even make this a priority, it is because this would drastically affect their economies, negatively or positively, and this is going to be a net positive for the entire world. And better yet for us, we are going to be a completely neutral security force to protect them. They shall be our client indefinitely. You could think of it like a business merger where we and they will be making a lot of money, which is exactly what we've wanted all along. My friends, we are winding down to the end here. Not only the end of this episode, but the end of Season 2 of the Gun Empire series, and the series as a whole, it would seem. Kinda. Not really, of course. I mean, this series is technically ending, but, you know, the universe as a whole, the RKRU, is continuing, and we will definitely see these characters again. As I mentioned at the end of last episode, I'm thinking I'm going to do the next series as a Rags to Riches style, just RimWorld Rags to Riches, I suppose. Haven't really worked out a title just yet, unfortunately, but it is going to be taking place in this universe on this planet, and it is also essentially going to be an extension of the Gun Empire series because of that. And I'm very excited for that, and I hope you guys are as well. I hope you'll stick with me through this and, you know, kind of watch that series as well. If you like the Gun Empire series, I think you'll like Rags to Riches and the other series that we end up doing in this universe as we continue it forward. I think I haven't counted before this narration here, but I think we're like 6 or 7 series in, if you count the Gun Empire seasons as one series, of course, which I would. I think we're about 7 or something like that in, so we're really far into the RKRU, and it's kind of my little baby. It's my little child, you know, and I love it, and you guys love it, and it's great. It really is, and I can't be more grateful to you guys because none of this would have been possible without you guys, these series, these seasons, none of it, and I'm eternally grateful. I really am. I know, you know, I always say that, but I truly am, honestly. I also kind of wanted to discuss a little bit as to why I'm ending the series at Season 2 like this. I know a lot of people have been asking, and I've kind of talked about the issues that I'm having with this save file, but to kind of give a little bit more clarity, you know, I'm really limited in this world at this point because it is from the previous save file, and we have so many mods, and so many of those mods are still outdated. You know, a big reason is because, for one, I want to move on and I want to tell some other stories because we're really too powerful here in this series as well, in this base. We could do just about anything we really wanted to. And it seems like a lot of you guys have noticed this as well, as I see here in a comment by our good friend Tekisas Bukani. I apologize, I know I've butchered your name, so I'm very sorry about that. But, you know, I don't want this series series to become boring either, just because, you know, like, we're too strong and stuff like that. But also, like I mentioned a moment ago, we are severely limited. You know, for example, with this save file, I can't reinstall things, so like, you know, urns or TVs or dining chairs, you know, basic stuff, and that actually limits me a lot more than you might think. Now, you may think to yourself, well, who gives a shit about dining chairs and stuff like that, and I agree with you, it's more of an inconvenience. However, it's something I wanted to do in this season that I don't think that we really got to do as much last season, were these smaller operations. Like, for example, when we're at war with the rebels, I thought it might be fun if we went to some of their smaller settlements, maybe on foot or in smaller vehicles and stuff like that, you know, and had these tinier battles like smaller operations. But I can't do that because that would require me to do things like reinstall these turrets that we can bring with us, and I can't do that. If I use the resources to try and build turrets while we're there, it'll take too long and our mercenaries will end up dying. Some other examples, not necessarily of reinstalling things, but the steel torrent mod doesn't work, so if you notice, a lot of our enemies throughout the series didn't have any vehicles that would actually move and attack us. They would stay stationary, unfortunately, and that's because Steel Torrent was the mod I was using to spawn a vehicle in with our enemies to give them that leverage and that little oomph to try and, you know, take us out. But I can't do that because it's not working, and then the other types of vehicles from other mods don't actually move to fight us. So, you know, I kind of had to work around that. Another example of an issue is the Factional War mod. The updated version is not working with this save file either for whatever reason, which is causing issues for me because that means every time you're seeing these factions battle, I'm individually placing every single pawn. And you might think, well, that's not a big deal. I've used dev mode. I could just spawn in pawns and then you could use character editor to try and give them a loadout. And that is what I used to do, but the problem is now as well with this save file, dev mode is severely limited as well. I can't actually open anything up. I'm being forced to use the pinned like options in dev mode. You can actually go in and pin them, and you can use those. Like if I want to spawn a pawn, I can pin that, but that also doesn't work. I don't know if it's an issue with the factions or what, but yeah, I can't do any of that. So I've just been extremely limited, and I didn't want to bring this up until this point because, you know, that would ruin the fun. So I apologize if it ruins the fun or the immersion now, but that is my reason for, you know, needing to quit at Season 2 with this world. And of course, lastly, you know, after you've had a save file in RimWorld, and we've had this one since January of this year, you know, they start to get pretty big and they start to stutter, so occasionally you'll see pawns kind of freeze up for a second, stuff like that. And I even upgraded my processor a few months ago before actually starting this series, and, you know, we're still having those issues. So that's another reason. It's just too big of a save file, and I kind of need to refresh and restart the world and, you know, add in all the factions and stuff like that again and give it a clean slate. But those are my reasons for needing to end the series at Season 2. I hope you guys understand. I'm sure you do. And, you know, again, I'm just so grateful that you guys have been with me through this journey and that you've been so supportive and that you guys have loved this and we've made it our own series. I love you guys. I truly do. And, you know, once again, I am grateful. So thank you ever so much. I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. But I almost forgot, real quick before I go, we have a name for our rebel faction. We are now going to be naming them the Republic of Libertas. Libertas being the word in Latin for liberty and or freedom. And of course, this name has been provided by our good friend MD.Akib Al-Azad. So thank you ever so much for that. Alright though guys, one final time, I love you ever so much. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you in the next series. Goodbye.